Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. I just want want to say a huge thank you for everyone that's here, and the biggest thank you for Maharaj for blessing us today with his presence and association. I don't really have many words here, but most of you here already know Maharaj, so any introduction would be really an understatement. But yeah, as we know, he's really transformed my life certainly, and I know many of yours here today through his impactful teachings, his compassionate and loving nature, and just, yeah, short words, but yeah, anyways. So yeah, thank you so much, devotees, and thank you so much, Maharaj, and I'll hand it over to Maharaj for our talk today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I was given a topic about anxiety and how to take shelter in the times of anxiety and fear. So I will read a very beautiful verse and purport from Bhagavad-gita from the 5th chapter. But Srila Prabhupada basically explains it all. There is no need to say anything more, but we can still talk a little bit. So this is the verse number 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. So this is the verse number 12 from the 5th chapter of Bhagavad-gita, Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness. Yuktaha Karma Phalam Tyaktva Shantim Apnoti Naishtikim Ayuktaha Kamakarena Phale Saktaha Nibadyate Yuktah Karma Phalam Tyaktva Yuktah Karma Phalam Tyaktva Shantimapnoti Naistikim Shantimapnoti Naistikim Ayuktah Karma Karena Ayuktah Karma Karena Phale Sakto Nibadyate Phale Sakto Nibadyate Yuktah Karma Phalam Tyaktva Shantimapnoti Naistikim Ayuktah Karma Karena Phale Sakto Nibadyate. Translation by Srila Prabhupada in his purport. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me, whereas a person who is not in union with divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Purport. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and works for him only is certainly a liberated person. He has no anxiety over the results of his work. In Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety over the results of work of an activity is explained as being once functioning in the conception of duality, that is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Vayam dvitiya binivesha taksyat, Srila Prabhupada means this verse. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness, but one who is entangled in profit calculating for sense gratification cannot have that peace. That is the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there is no existence besides Krishna is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Yuktah karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim. Ayuktah karma karena phale sakto nibadhyate. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me, whereas the person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschathyadesha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namashristam Manumapi Sachiputra Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Madurim Goshtavatim Radhakunda Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Sri Gurum Tam Natosmi Anandalila Maya Vigrahai Himambadi Vechabi Sundarai Tasmai Mahaprimarasa Pradaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Yantah Pravishya Mamavachim Imam Prasuptam Sanjivayata Kila Shakti Darak Svadhamna Anyamsya Hasta Charana Shravana Tvagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Swasyastu Vishwasya Kalach Prasidatam Dayantu Bhutani Shivam Mithodhiya Manascha Badram Bhajatata Dokshaje Aveshyatam No Matirapya Haituki. Hare Krishna. So the question which was put in front of me to explain what is the cause of anxiety. And Srila Prabhupada very clearly says that there is only one cause of anxiety in this world. That's the attachment to the fruits of our actions. We are so much attached to the fruits of our actions. We're always worried whether we will obtain the required thing, what we are doing, what we should do to really bring about success. And in this way, our consciousness, not in the work itself, but in the fruit of the work. And it creates tremendous tension inside us. Because if we are concerned with the work, and Krishna himself very clearly says in the very beginning of Bhagavad-gita, Karmani eva adhikaraste maphaleshu kadachana. Your adhikar, your right, is to work. And this we all know, we can work. And if we are peacefully engaged in work and concerned with making the work as best as possible, as good as possible, to the best of our abilities, then the result will come. We don't have to worry about the result. But the moment when we start worrying about the result, whether it will come or not, what kind of result it will be, we become completely mental because, as Krishna himself says, the result does not depend on us. Karmani eva adhikaraste. Only karma is your right. Maphaleshu kadachana. Never the end result of it. We never know whether our labor will be successful or not at the end of the day. We may put all our heart and still there will be failure, or we may not do anything and the result will come. There is some other factors involved. What we are in control of what we can do. And if we concentrated on this and we're happy with the way we are doing this, we are happy because we are doing our best, then, whatever result is there, it's ultimately up to Krishna. And, even if the result is not the way we initially planned or desired, we still remain happy because we did what we could do. We did our best. We did the best of our abilities. And, result didn't come, what can we do? Like Srila Niranjana Maharaj, he jokes, he came to Russia long back in the beginning of 90s, and he said that the first words which I learned in Russian was "не получилось." "Не получилось" means it didn't happen. So I asked devotee to do something and they come and say it didn't happen. And then he says, this is how devotees taught me to be detached from the results of the actions. It didn't happen, didn't work out. It didn't work out. But that's a fact. We know that sometimes we put all our endeavors and it doesn't work, or sometimes we don't do so much and the result is great. And therefore, in the very end of Bhagavad-gita, Krishna explains the 5 factors of activity. And he says that the 5th factor of activity, the 5th very important feature upon whom the result ultimately depends is Daiva, the involvement of God. He is involved in every of our action, and he is actually regulating. He knows when to give us results and when not to give us results. So he knows what he is doing. So if we are doing the work, here Krishna is very, very clear about this. He says, Yuktah karma palam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim. He says that somebody who has connection with the divine. Yuktaha means one who is engaged in karma yoga. Yuktaha means basically somebody who is connected from the same verbal root, yuj, from which yoga comes, and so many other words in Sanskrit. So if somebody knows that God is involved, that God knows, God is in our heart, God is in everyone's heart, and he is regulating all our activities. So yuktaha karma palam tyaktva, he renounces the attachment to the fruits of his actions. Karma palam tyaktva. He doesn't renounce karma itself. Usually people misunderstand this and they say, if I don't have to be attached to the fruits of my action, why should I be doing work? Isn't it logical, if I'm not supposed to be attached to the fruits, so why should I work at all? Because I'm working for the fruits. But Krishna says, no, you're working not for the fruits. You're working to express yourself, to fulfill your mission in life, your destination. You're working because you cannot really stop working. Krishna says in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-gita that one cannot stop working even for a split second. Even if we try to renounce all work, we're still breathing and we still have to take, water. And it's a huge labor, to take a glass of water and drink. It's work itself. So it's a ridiculous concept to renounce work. It's a ridiculous concept. It's impossible. It's people who are trying to do this, they're destined for the failure. You cannot renounce work, but you can renounce the attachment to the fruits of your action. And therefore, Krishna says, Yuktah karma palam tyaktva shantim apnoti naistikim. He obtains shanti, peace of mind, and not only peace of mind, naistikim. Naistikim, it's the word which is derived from the word nishta. We all know what is nishta. Nishta means steady. So naistiki shanti means steady peace. Sometimes we experience peace even when we attach to the fruits of our action. We sit in front of the TV and we have some sort of peace because our mind is distracted and but this is not steady peace. This peace very easily can be changed into a lot of anxieties. As soon as this thought comes, what will be? What will be the future? Who will be the future Prime Minister of Great Britain, when this nice gentleman, Shaunaka Rishi, goes away from the office? Or what will be the next year? What will be, we're living in this very unsteady and unpredictable world. And there are so many causes of anxieties. But ultimately, again, the cause of anxiety is not understanding that Krishna is in charge. And Krishna is all good. That he wishes good. He ultimately wishes us good. And therefore, you obtain peace when you are not attached to the fruits of action and when you understand that somebody who is very benevolent, a benevolent, all-powerful creature, is in charge of the fruits. And he will give what I need. And he will not give what I don't need. Even if I think that I need it, and he doesn't give, it means simply that I'm mistaken, I'm an illusion. Because he knows better. We may fantasize and imagine that we have this success and that success, but we never know what will be the end result of this success. We may achieve something which we want, but the result will be horrible. Sometimes people, they want to get married and then the result is very not nice. Sometimes they want to, they're going into opposite direction, they want to divorce, but we don't know the end result of it. So the secret of peace is to understand that the result depends on Krishna. He will give the results. He knows what he is doing. And we don't know what we are doing. All our plans are useless. We may achieve what we desired, but not happy at the end. And therefore Krishna says here next, Ayuktah kama karina, the one who does not have this connection with God, who does not have this understanding and this mental connection that ultimately I'm a part of parcel of God, and ultimately I'm dependent on Him, and ultimately I have to, work for Him, then I'm doing this, I'm doing my work, kama karena, I'm doing my work to fulfill my desires. All my concern is that all my measurement, the, how you say this, measure stick, or what, how you say this, how I measure my success is whether my desires are fulfilled or not. And then phale asakta nibhadyate. Krishna says, such person who is very attached to the fruit, phale, his attachment is in the fruit. I want this fruit, I want this result by all means. Nibhadyate. He is not only bound, he is nibhadyate. Nibhadyate means nitaram badhyate. Nitaram badhyate means thoroughly bound. He's completely bound. He's bound by his actions, he's bound by the results of his actions, and he is ultimately bound by the anxiety which he is always under. Hare Krishna. It's interesting that Bhagavad-gita Prabhu just entered at this moment of our discourse. And he is a very good example of somebody who is suffering a lot of physical inconvenience and anxieties, but at the same time remains composed and peaceful. Because there is a connection, because he knows that ultimately everything depends on God. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell the story which you told me yesterday, or I should not. I don't have to, but
It's up to you.
He told me yesterday that recently he had some near-death experience when he lost his consciousness. And it was a very vivid experience when, after basically giving up the body, passing away from the body, he still remained himself. And what he felt at this moment of time, when he was not in anxiety about this present life, he felt very deep and profound feeling of peace. So as long as we have this idea that everything depends on me, and I have to worry about this, and I have to work, and I have to do this, and who will take care of me if I don't do this, we are in anxiety. As long as we understand that ultimately everything depends on God, Uparwala, as they say in Hindi, that everything depends on Uparwala. So, as long as we have this understanding that He is taking care of me, I'm in His hands. As soon as we give up this concept that I have to worry about myself, then we become very peaceful. And this concept that I have to worry about myself is only there because we think that I'm the doer. Ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. This is the ahankar. Everything depends on me. I have to do it. And because we forget that God is also working actively, that God is also involved in our day-to-day activities, God is also a part of our life, and ultimately He is the ultimate giver of the results, not us. the moment we, and this is how the topic actually was formulated for me, what is the cause of anxiety and how to take shelter of Krishna. The moment we really, not theoretically, but in a practical level, in the level of our heart, take shelter of Krishna, means understanding that I am dependent on him even now. I will definitely be dependent 100% on him, 108% of him, the moment I leave the body. But when we are in this body, and the body has this power and has this mind and this and that, we're prone to be in illusion that, it depends on me. And especially the mind. Mind is such a controlling entity. The mind wants to control the environment. The mind wants to make it the way he wants, and as soon as he feels that he is not in the control, he becomes frantic. He becomes really, but in reality we cannot do anything. I have personal experience. I will share this personal experience with you. It's little humbling experience, but nevertheless I want to share it with you. At one point I became very anxious because of constant stress and constant work, and it's very this concept which I am talking about is very beautiful. It's the beginning, it's the basis, but at the same time, and theoretically we understand this concept, but it's very difficult to apply it in practice. As soon as we start acting, we always think, what will happen if I will not do this and I will not do that? Nothing will happen. Everything will go fine. Of course, we should do dutifully what we are supposed to do, because this is our duty, this is our adhikar, this is our qualification to do. But, because of this program in our mind, very strong program, I have to do it, I have to do it, I have to do it, I have to achieve result. What will happen if the result will be not to my liking? Oh no, it will be the end of the world. No, the world will go on, no problem. So because of this chronic stress, your nervous system at one point strikes. It becomes completely, you become completely exhausted. That's the only result of anxiety. It's not that you make sure that the result will come by worrying about it. Not at all. That's not the result. The result will come or not come, that's a completely different consideration. But the sure result of anxiety is that you're becoming worn out by all these anxieties. You become overstressed and you become completely, unhappy ultimately. What happened with me, this is my confession in front of all of you. I specifically has chosen this small group so that I am not so embarrassed. But, over so many years I was in this stress and anxiety. Of course, I was changing, and there were very happy moments when I was preaching to people and doing kirtan. But the rest of the time I was in this condition, and the nervous system couldn't tolerate it any longer, and at one point it went on strike. Like now all this, trained or whatever workers, they're on strike. So in the same way, your nervous system, at one point says enough is enough. I cannot take it any longer. I cannot take all these anxieties any longer, and it's. But the mind become. I was watching myself. What was the beauty? The beauty of Krishna consciousness is that even in the most difficult situation, you still can be in the position of observer. You still witness. You still can analyze what is going on. And it helps. It definitely helps. So I was somewhat detached, but still I was observing what's going on in my mind. So the mind became very, in a very strange condition. The mind wanted to control everything. And because the mind wanted to control everything, there was not a second of peacefulness within the mind. And because mind became very, I remember very vividly this condition of the mind. The mind didn't trust anything. What will happen if I'm not controlling anything? Anything can happen, this world is so cruel, this and that may happen. So as a result of it, I couldn't sleep. The mind couldn't go to sleep, couldn't relax, because the mind was thinking, if I sleep, what will happen with me if I sleep? Anything can happen, and I have to be in control. And then the mind started worrying that he cannot sleep. And because he is in anxiety that he cannot sleep, the prospect of sleep goes even further, because when the mind is in anxiety, how you can sleep? You cannot sleep when the mind is in anxiety. It's a vicious circle. You went into this trap. The mind went into this terrible trap. Why? Because of this habit of worrying. We may not understand how deeply rooted this habit is. We're worried, with cause, but usually without any cause. We're worried about this and we're worried about that. There is a joke about this, very nice joke. One old man who had, when you're coming to the old age, your anxieties and worries become even more. You think, what will happen with me? This body is falling apart and this and that. So many causes for anxiety. So he put an ad in the newspaper. I need some assistant who will take away my anxieties. And one young, unemployed man, he thought it's a good opportunity. I'll come to this old fool and, I will take his anxieties. So he came to him and said, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to take your worries and anxieties, no problem. He said, yes, very good, young man. So the young man said, so how much will you pay me monthly? He said, no problem, I will pay you $1,000 every month. He said, oh yeah, really very nice, so. And then he asked him, the old man, so how and when you will pay me? He said, this will be your first anxiety. This will be your first worry. You can start your job. Anyway, the point of this little joke is that, we're used to be in anxiety for reason and without reason. But ultimately, the underlying mentality behind it is that we don't trust God. We don't, in the ultimate issue, we don't trust God. This mistrust, which may have some, some basis to it, but ultimately it's completely ridiculous, and therefore we become nishanta. We lose our sleep and we lose our peace of mind. So if we want to really work without stress, if we really want to learn this work, how to work without stress, we should not be attached to the fruits. There is a beautiful story which you might have heard. It's Harikesh, former Maharaj. He was telling this story when Srila Prabhupada, it was a very tense. Yeah, first another story about Srila Prabhupada. Old man, 70 plus, old man, traveling all over the world, arranged a new religious movement which has so many problems, so many new records, they do so much nonsense. And how Srila Prabhupada maintained his peace, how he could be, being the leader of this movement, completely, strange sort of movement. Prithu Prabhu, he told the story that once Srila Prabhupada came to France, and there were so many devotees, and it was in New Mayapur, and they were waiting for him, and Srila Prabhupada traveled for so long, and ultimately he arrived in New Mayapur, and they arranged a nice Vyasasana. It was huge Vyasasana. At that time, they had this very, royal style of Vyasasana. They were big as sofas. So Prabhupada sat down, and there was a crowd of people, many people, anxiously waiting for him to speak. And he starts speaking, and then after some time, he lay down in front of everyone and starts sleeping, very peacefully. And everyone is sitting there. What it means that here is somebody who is completely peaceful. He can sleep even in this condition. He is detached. He is not in complete anxiety how people will take me, what people will make out of it, what will, he's just peaceful. He is here. He's doing his best. At the same time, he is very peacefully, Need is there, he sleeps. And then after a few minutes, he woke up and started talking again. No problem. With the same calmness and composure and everything. And Harikesh Forman Maharaj, he explains another story, which is one of my favorites of Prabhupada's stories, when, this movement is there and so many problems are there, especially during this Mumbai, Bombay struggle for the land, Juhu land and everything, and court cases, and, in America, the programmers took the movement in the court, and this and that, so much problems. And he says that the pressure was building day after day after day after day. And, and ultimately, as the crown, as the, something, at the very end, one telegram came. And the secretaries of Srila Prabhupada, they knew that this telegram, something is terrible in the telegram. So Srila Prabhupada, he opened the telegram, he read a few lines there, very calmly, and then without showing any signs of, stress or anxiety, he went to his room. And Harikesh Maharaj said, I couldn't contain myself. I just wanted to see what he's going to do. So I put my eye into the keyhole to look. And he said, what I saw was very amazing. He said that Prabhupada lay down on the floor and started laughing. He was just laughing very, very peacefully. And he said, at this moment, I felt as if demigods are, showering flower petals upon him. So that's what this verse is all about. And again, as I said, this concept is simple, beautiful, rational, understandable, very difficult to apply in reality. Extremely difficult to practice it because of the habit. This habit of worrying about the results of our work is so deeply rooted that we cannot even understand, how deeply it is. It's very difficult to uproot it. So therefore, one solution is that we have to hear about it again and again and again. Not everything, you're not the doer. You're not the doer in the sense that we're doers, definitely. We have this ego, we're supposed to do something, we're doers. But we're not an independent doer. When in Bhagavad-gita Krishna says you're not the doer, he means this, because in 13th chapter and later in the 18th chapter, he says that, no, you're a doer. The agency is there in the soul. The ability to act, the desire to act is there in the soul. We as a soul, we are acting. But we are not an independent doer. That's the concept which has to be very clearly ingrained within our heart. I'm not independent doer. It means that not everything depends on me. And the only thing which depends on me is how well I'm doing my duty. How well I'm doing what I am supposed to do. Everything else is in the hands of God. I did my part. The rest is his part, and let him do what he should do. So that understanding or that concept of which Krishna explains here is what was it I wanted to say in continuation? Yeah. This concept generally gives a very balanced understanding of how I should interact with this matter. Because the interaction with this matter is very troublesome. We all know this material world is a very difficult place, and it's not very always happy place. So, and we have these two extremes. In the beginning, we are very eager to work, to achieve some success, to enjoy the fruits of our actions. And then after doing it for some time, after getting a lot of problems upon our head, upon a lot of strikes from material nature, this and that, we're going to another extreme. We say, no, I will not work at all. In the beginning, this is the first initial idea. Yes, I should work and I will be successful. When young people are there in the school, they look at all these old people and they say, oh, these old people, they're failures. And I will be successful. I know what I will do. I will make it. Yeah, in a few years they will be the same like this old frustrated people. But the opposite idea is equally wrong. The idea that I will become successful is wrong. The idea is that I should renounce all my work and I should sit and meditate and go somewhere in Himalayas and, be completely detached is also wrong. This is both wrong ideas. And it's very difficult for our ego to stay somewhere in the middle. Ego likes extremes. Either one extreme or another extreme. So the pendulum of our ego goes from one side to another side. And Srila Prabhupada explains this in the introduction of the Nectar of Devotion, about this pendulum, Bhoga Tyaga, Bhoga Tyaga, Bhoga Tyaga, Bhoga Tyaga. But there is no Krishna in it. Bhoga is not Krishna, because you want to enjoy this world and you want to lord it over. Tyaga is not Krishna, because you just want to renounce and give it up, and you can't care less about Krishna. There is no Krishna in this equation, Bhoga Tyaga. Krishna is in between. When you work dutifully, nicely, diligently, as well as you can perform your duties, but at the same time, ultimately, you're not attached to the works, to the fruits of works. And in this peaceful condition, the possibility of your connection with God appears. You actually cannot be connected with God while you are in anxiety. Every one of us has this experience. You are in complete anxiety, you try to chant, and it just doesn't work. It's too difficult. You try, Hare Krishna, 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 but your mind is all over the place. The mind is not really peaceful. To be connected with God, you need to be peaceful. To be peaceful, you have to have very clear idea. Not everything depends on me. Ultimately, everything depends on Him. Even now, I'm completely in His hands. Like in the story which I told, when we have this near-death experience, we understand we are in His hands. And that's why we don't like this, we're so afraid of dying. The death is so fearful for us because we know that at the moment of death we are not in control. And we're so used to being in control, and it's such a horrible idea that all of a sudden I'm not in control. How is that possible? I'm the Lord and Master of this little house in London, and how I can all of a sudden be nobody, and there is a very nice, interesting story of Lord Buddha. A very interesting story. We know his life, that he left his family in a young age. His wife was pregnant when he left, or just gave the birth of his son, and he left and became enlightened, became Buddha, started his movement, so many followers, so many disciples, and at one point he decided to go back to his wife. He wanted to visit her. And when he came, she became furious by seeing him. She started yelling at him and saying, you are nonsense, you're covered, you left at night without saying me a word, you left me with this little baby, and this little son is now he grew up. It was 8 years later, the son was 8 years old. And Buddha was very calm, Gautama. She was yelling at him and yelling, and he was peaceful. He was saying, this is the life, and he was very peaceful. And ultimately, she wanted to play a trick with him. She wanted to get him back to home. So she called their little son, who was 8 years old at that time. And this little son came, beautiful boy. And she said, so now you are his father. He grew without a father. So what are you going to give to him? You should give something to him. This is your duty as the father. And Buddha, he thought for a moment. And he asked his servant, Ananda, Ananda, bring me my begging bowl. And he took his begging bowl and he said, my dear son, this is the best thing which I want to give you. This is my begging bowl, take it. And meaning that, otherwise you will become a king. And you will become in complete anxiety. Don't be in anxiety. Just, take this begging bowl and depend ultimately on God. His wife was shocked. she didn't expect this. His wife didn't really like it. But he wanted to share this experience, that ultimately, all this anxieties is to teach us that we should not depend on our mind. We should depend ultimately on Krishna. And that's what Krishna calls here yuktaha. If you become yuktaha, connected with God, then the anxiety will be gone. And when your anxiety will be gone, your connection with Krishna will be strengthened. It's mutually dependent things. Initially you have to renounce the attachment to the fruits. Some little piece comes when you're not so much in anxiety, what will happen with me? It will happen, no problem. I remember once, in the very beginning, in the beginning of 90s, we had this little temple in Moscow. It was a rented house. And it was a very turmoiled condition in the country. And, sometimes even big governmental officials would come to us and speak. So one very sympathetic person from the government came once. And he started speaking, and we were talking. It was a nice conversation. And then he decided to give us advice. He said, you're nice people, you're nice guys, but what I think you should do to achieve success in this country for your movement, you should start giving predictions to people. And if you give predictions, people are there, because, at that time, Russia was in such a chaos, and people were in complete anxiety about the future, and therefore all these astrologers, and they were very popular, they were telling this will happen and this will happen, and the peace will come to Russia, and they were. So he said, you should start doing this. He said, we're already doing this. He said, really? Yeah. I said, yes, we're predicting people their future. He said, really? Yes, we're telling them that they will die. This is, this is a very accurate prediction. He didn't like it. But ultimately, we understand that, what is the point? This life is given to us to develop connection with God. And this we can do even now. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that's a few points about anxiety and how to take shelter of Krishna at these moments. Maybe there are some questions.
So when sometime we in work situation we feel there is injustice or unfair treatment, so we get two kind of advice, one through our mind or through our surrounding. One is just accept the situation, if you're, and consider that your destiny is driving you in a certain direction, accept and move on. And then second kind of advice we get is
Fight with it.
stand for it, fight for it. And then there are examples from Shastra, like Arjuna had to fight and all that. So what is the right way or approach of things to be take in this situation?
There is no one answer to this. Both of these possibilities can be right and can be wrong in different situations, depending on the circumstances, depending on us. Sometimes, the best way is to just, accept it and go on with life. Sometimes it's necessary to stand for it and to fight. It really depends. It depends on your, on your mental strength, on the, there's no, the main point is not what you do externally, but in which consciousness you do it. The consciousness, this is what matters. If you ultimately doing it for Krishna, and if you feel that by fighting for it, you will achieve some good result for Krishna and for, at least you are standing for the right cause and it's necessary, and your motivation is not for yourself, but for Krishna. Of course, the self how to say this, self-deception mechanisms are very strong, and sometimes we may feel that I'm doing it for Krishna, but in reality we want it for ourselves. But if we really train our mind and examine it, what is more beneficial in terms of my connection with Krishna. Sometimes it's better not to get into trouble and just go on with life and let it go. Sometimes it's necessary to fight. So it's you should ask yourself for whom I am doing it. Am I doing it because I just want cozy life and I don't want anxiety, and I'm letting this injustice happen, whereas it's not right, and some other people will also suffer because of this injustice? And I'm pretending that I'm peaceful Bhakt and therefore humble Bhakt and therefore I don't care. Or we should ask, why I'm fighting, because my ego is hurt. If the wrong motivation is there, the action will be wrong. If the right motivation is there, then the action will be right. So it's a question of motivation. We first have to establish very clearly and strongly, this is the motivation I'm guided by. And then when the motivation is right, the action will be right, by definition. So that's the solution for this.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. That was really helpful. I know someone who is going through a lot of anxiety, and they've tried a lot of different things, seen different doctors. It's come to the point where the doctor said that it may be worth giving this person antidepressant medication, like Prozac. So you mentioned it's difficult to have a deep connection with Krishna and have that trust when you're going through stress and anxiety. I will certainly share this information. I was making notes with the person, but any guidance you can give on what else I could share with them to avoid going down the route?
In such conditions, some external help may be necessary, because when, as I said, it's very easy to get into a vicious circle. When your anxiety will be self-perpetuating, and not only self-perpetuating, but self-exaggerating. The anxiety, it will be like chain reaction. The anxiety will breed anxiety, and even more anxiety and more anxiety. So to break this vicious circle, you may need an external help. Of course, I'm not a great proponent of all these artificial chemical medicines, which ultimately create more harm than they help. But in some situations it may be necessary. We should not be fanatical in this regard. Sometimes it may be necessary. But ultimately, we should also work internally on this problem, understanding that the ultimate cause of this anxiety, fear, depression, and all this sort of emotional thing is my lack of trust to God. So in this regard, besides medical help, the help of devotees who are near you, who are caring, is even more important, because you feel the trust to God when you feel, or when you enter the trustful relationship with the devotees. When you're surrounded by this support, when you are in this environment, emotionally supportive environment, then it's easier in general to overcome this condition. Now so many people suffer from this. So many people have these problems, fear, anxiety, because this is, the whole atmosphere is it's from Ayurvedic point of view, it's all Vata disorders. Vata disorders ultimately create anxiety and fear. Vata has this emotionally, the condition of Vata is of fear. And because our civilization, our culture is so much Vata disturbing, it's very nervous culture, it's neurotic culture. The whole culture is the relationship between people very neurotic. The culture in the the workplace, in the offices are very, stressful. It's very stressful culture, and it's not and people are mean and nasty to each other, and sometimes even devotees are mean and nasty to each other because of this, programming. So it's all unfortunate. So besides taking some medical help, of course, better to have some more natural help like Ayurveda or whatever. But besides that, what is very important is to have the environment which would give you some protection and security. Then you will feel more relieved. And vice versa, if you are in an environment which is very, not very nice, then the problem will be only worsened with the passage of time. So, and unfortunately, the whole world is going in this direction. Families become more and more, more and more tense. The environment is not really nice because everyone in this concept. And ultimately, the ultimate cause is the lack of God consciousness. Lack of understanding that God is in charge and He knows what He's doing. Everyone has his ego and wants to establish his rule and his ways. Yes, Krishna, what? Okay. Okay.
Right, sometimes we feel that we have basic needs, basic material needs that we need to fulfill to be able to practice Krishna consciousness. And that basic need varies from devotee to devotee. So it may be the cleanliness of the environment, it may be the pillow you sleep on, it may be, it can be from very large things to very small things.
Yeah, of course.
And often if you don't have those things, it actually creates anxiety, such anxiety that you can't practice spirituality in a peaceful way, or at least in a progressive way, because you feel like you just need those things to practice. And I suppose the difficulty is knowing how far you go with those basic needs if they're not there. And then secondly, how do you decide whether that circumstance needs to be changed so that you can have those basic needs, or whether it's the mindset that needs changing? Because in your class, Maharaj, a lot of it was around mindset, but sometimes you feel like if that circumstance doesn't change, I simply cannot practice.
That's true that we all have basic requirements, and without fulfilling these requirements we may feel very uncomfortable and very uneasy, so to speak. That's true. But at the same time, mind is programmable, if there is such word in English. You can program your mind. For example, in yoga, there is this 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. And one of the yamas is santosha. means satisfaction with what you have. So it from we should endeavor to achieve what we feel we need, but at the same time we should also work with our mind and try to be satisfied with what we have. Because the mind, has the tendency to become too, capricious or whatever, over small things. And it's good to work with the mind and say, no, this is fine, no problem, this is good, this is, this pillow is okay. Sometimes people, they're so particular about all these little details of their environment. So both things should be there. Some basic needs should be there, and there's no harm in trying to achieve them, because this is some sort of concept. But at the same time, if you work with the mind and say that maybe this BMW car is okay and you don't need Tesla, maybe it's not such a crucial element or whatever. Because we can see, because I live in Govardhan, every night I go out and I walk a little bit near Govardhan, and I see how people, they sleep on the earth, on the ground. They may have little something, they may not have. And there is light is there, the music is going on, it's cold, or it may be very hot, and they're sleeping peacefully. And I'm passing by them, and I'm working with my mind. They can be peaceful in this condition. So theoretically, you can also be peaceful in this condition. Of course, if you too artificially, place yourself in this environment, that may not be so good. But at the same time, it very much really depends on how your mind works. So these two things should be simultaneous. That it's fine. What I have is okay. This is like when you ask Guru Maharaj, what is your health? So his standard answer is better than I deserve. So and so if we always see our condition as being better than we deserve, then we may be more peaceful about this. But again, we should not be too artificial. Should not try to. Some basic needs should be there. That's for sure. We should not be too, artificially impose upon ourselves something which we cannot really be used. Yes, you want to ask?
I was just wondering if you could give some advice on how to navigate situations where you're working with other people and a very specific result is required and expected from what you're doing. So how can we navigate situations like that?
See, Krishna never says that you will not get the result. The result will come. He's talking about wasting your energy on the anxiety about the result. We should try to get the result. and work as nicely and as diligently as possible. But at the same time, like people, students, they or these young children after graduating school, they go and they write an exam, right? And they wrote an exam. And what will happen with them? The results of exam will come in 3 days. So what they will do these 3 days? They will be in complete anxiety. What is the use of this anxiety? The result will come. It doesn't depend whether you be anxious or not. You already submitted your papers, but because we have this understanding very deeply that if I don't worry, the result will not come. That's the problem. And this is the false concept. Whether you worry or not, the result will come. Result does not depend on your worry. But we have this idea that unless I worry, the proper result will not come. No, the better result will come if you don't worry, because worry means you wasting your energy. Your energy is wasted. Your mental energy is wasted. You become completely, the entropy of your mind is increasing, and you're not interacting properly with this material nature. So Krishna is saying this is the art of work, how to work without being entangled in it. Don't worry about this. Do it. Definitely do it. Do it very nicely. Result will come. But don't worry. Worry about Krishna. Whether he has nice prasadam today or not. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I have this question. What to do with the anxiety during your service? Sometimes, actually, even when you're doing pujari service, for example, dressing the deities, there is some anxiety as well, isn't it? Because of the time, of different circumstances. So, how to deal with this kind of anxiety?
Again, the same answer is there. Anxiety doesn't help you to get the work done.